So two fish are in a tank, and one of them turns to the other and says, "Do you know how to drive this?"
Excellent. Adam, I think you've been replaced.
Thankfully. I'm sure people all over the internet are saying that, aren't they?
All right. Good morning and welcome, or good afternoon and welcome to yet another edition of the Digital Download, the longest running weekly business talk show on LinkedIn Live. Today we're asking, are you agile? We'll have a special guest, Clarence Williams, to help us sort it out. We'll talk with Clarence about agile. What do we mean by it? And how does it extend beyond the IT team and into the entire organization? But before we bring Clarence on, let's go around and introduce everyone. While we're doing that, for the audience, why don't you go and reach out to a friend, ping them, and have them join us. We strive to make the digital download an interactive experience. Audience participation is highly encouraged. Right. So, introductions. Adam, would you please kick us off?
Hi, I'm I'm Adam Gray. I'm co-founder of DLA Ignite, and I just love this show. I love it. It's one of the high points of the week because it's just such good fun. We have really interesting guests, really interesting audience, and really interesting people on the panel, and me as well. So it's great.
Awesome. Thank you. Jordan.
Hello, everyone. I'm Jordan Abbott, B2B social influence and interaction advisor at Supero, and I am delighted to be a DLA Ignite partner.
Thank you. Alex.
Hello, everyone. So Alex Abbott, founder of Supero, and we are in sunny Leighton Buzzard. The sun is shining today. It's lovely to see the spring sun. And I am also a extremely happy DLA partner.
Excellent. Jensen.
Hi, I am Jensen Abbott. I work at Supero, and I too am a happy DLA partner.
Got you something different.
I know.
Tim.
Hi, I'm Tim Hughes. I'm the CEO and co-founder of DLA Ignite, and welcome everybody. I'm looking forward to a really exciting show.
Excellent. Tracy.
Hello, everyone. I am Tracy Borson, founder of TLB Coaching and Events, and I too. Well, we are all having different emotions this morning, it seems like, and so I'm going to go with enthusiastic DLA Ignite partner.
Yeah,
there we go. And myself, I'm Rob Durant, founder of Flywheel Results, based just outside of Boston, Massachusetts, and a content DLA Ignite partner. Before moving on, I did want to address Graham's question. He asks, have I slept in or have the clocks changed in the US? Yes.
Slept in, Graham, you're late.
Yes, the US changed clocks 2 weeks ahead of the UK. So for these 2 weeks and 2 weeks in the fall, all of our clocks are off. Sorry about that. So this week on the Digital Download, we'll speak with Clarence Williams, a business strategy and marketing consultant with a specialty in helping small business owners leverage big business applications to engineer profitability for their companies. Let's bring him on. Clarence, good morning and welcome.
Hey. Let me start by saying I'm happy.
Excellent.
Not just content.
Yeah. Actually excited.
There we go.
Awesome.
Clarence, tell us a little bit more about yourself and how you got here.
Okay. So Clarence Williams, actually founder. I'm a serial entrepreneur. I own a few companies. Most of them are in business strategy, marketing, and associated with the enterprise agile world, right? And so I've been around in consulting for probably over 30 years. that the gray hairs might tell you a little bit about that. But so consulting for 30 years, sales for just about that same amount of time. But about 15 years ago, I was out in at a client site looking at their financials. And I had gone through a stream of clients, actually, and looking at their financials, and all of them have that line item, marketing. And to be truthful, before that time, I didn't know much about marketing. It was like this gray area. And so I decided to dig in. I started following some of the top marketers I would say in the world. I spent a lot of money to be part of their masterminds. And so over the last, say, 15 to 17 years, I've been focused more on the marketing side of the house, helping companies understand what it means to be that market leader and industry expert.
Excellent. Thank you. So the topic of today is Agile. You can float like a butterfly and sting like a bee, but are you agile?
Yes.
First, can you help us out? What is meant by agile?
Well, that's kind of interesting. So first, Agile has a history. In 2001, a group of folks got together and created these 4 principles, right? And I'm going to go over them really quick, but there's some augmentation that's needed in order for it to be current, right? But one, it was, so the first one is individuals and interactions over processes and tools, working software over comprehensive documentation, which I would probably augment and say working products or functional products over comprehensive documentation, customer collaboration, the third, customer collaboration over contract negotiation, and the fourth is responding to change over following a plan. And so those 4 principles really was the start of the Agile world, going from waterfall to Agile, or the whole idea of going from project to product. So during that time frame, I would say I ended up being one of the few people who launched the first iPhone. I worked for AT&T, and that was a collaboration between AT&T and Apple. And I'll say at that time, AT&T had about 35 API partners. All of them claimed to be Agile. And between 2007 to 2019, I helped to grow that to about 1,000. And one of the agreements for being a partner was that you would practice Agile. And I'll just say Agile means different things to different people. And depending on your organization, your industry, it could mean different things to different people.
So Agile started out in IT. Has it stayed in IT?
Well, actually, probably the last 10 years, it has morphed into other industries. But for the most part, it's been perfected, quote, in the IT world or in software development. And when I say perfected, meaning a lot of the best practices that you might get from practitioners are usually from the software development area, from IT, but it has gone into different areas.
Tell us a little bit more about that. How does it go from IT to the business as a whole?
Well, see, so let's back up a little bit. I think I've heard folks on this call are founders of their company, right? And really, it is Agile. What is it really? It is delivering value to the marketplace. That's what it really is, right? How you deliver that value to the marketplace has a lot to do with the methodology that you decide to practice. And what I mean by methodology, there are a few. You have Scrum, which is a way of practicing Agile. Kanban, a different way. Some folks, there are 2 methods. You can put those 2 methodologies together and call it Scrumban. And then you have something out there called Extreme XP. Right. But now those are the fundamentals of Agile. What does that mean? It means that typically on a daily basis, you're getting together, you're having a daily meeting, and you're going over the items or the things on the backlog that you need to get accomplished. And you're doing that with a team of somewhere between 3 to 5 up to about 12 people. And you're basically getting together and working on that same project or initiative with the same mindset.
So why would somebody practice Agile? So it's a term that I've heard many, many times, and I've always associated it with software development and kind of producing something which is orientated towards an outcome, and then you learn things along the way and you fold those learnings into the continued development.
Right.
And I know that it's spread out into other areas of business, but why would one use an Agile kind of belief system or methodology? Why would one just not get on and do one's work?
So there's a simple answer to that, and there's a more complicated one. Which one do you want?
Well, I'm a simple man, so simple, please.
Efficiency, right? And it's really efficiency and having a client or end user centric view on product delivery, right? And so why would you do it? Because your competition is using it and leveraging it and doing it better than anybody else. And so if your competition is agile and you're not, your competition is likely to win, right? So what is it? You're listening to feedback from your marketplace, and you're being agile enough to be able to add the features and functionality that the market is asking for. And right, so it's efficiency, it's consistency of delivery. That's why you would not only have it in software development, but take it anywhere else.
Well, I think ironically, we have implemented agile thinking in how we have developed the business and how we have developed our products. Right. But I can't help thinking that we've kind of done that by accident, because lots of this stuff, I deliver something to you and you say, I don't understand that. Okay. Right. So the agile approach is I listen to you having said you don't understand that, and I think about how I can position it in a clearer way to you so that the next person does understand it.
Right.
So how does any business start to use a more structured approach to developing things on the fly, which is, it sounds like what Agile is.
Right. So my simple answer to that is to continue to ask more questions, right? The more complicated one to that is making sure that you're getting together daily and making sure that when you get together daily as a team, you're asking the question, are we delivering what the market wants, right? And then creating a backlog of items that allow you to go in the right direction, right? And then and constantly question if you're really going in the right direction. So when you talk about the old world, new world, or going from waterfall to agile, or going from project to product, we used to live in a world where we would have an idea of a product that came from leadership, and at the end of the day, you would deliver that product the way it was designed. But 18 months later, you don't have a product that the market wants, right? And so you want to make sure that you're listening to the market. You want to make sure that even if it's tough, that you pivot, that you change, that you do whatever is necessary to actually deliver what the market is saying they want.
And how does that? And I'm kind of, this is a genuine question, but it's also a little bit of devil's.
I like genuine questions.
But it's also a little bit of devil's advocate, because
no, please.
Because often the market actually doesn't know. So Henry Ford famously said, if I'd have asked my customers what they wanted, they would have said a faster horse. Right? So it's all very well to say, right, I'm going to identify what the market wants. But even Steve Jobs, I think, said, actually, they don't know what they want. They don't know what they can have. So it's our job to create something that they do want. And so how do we balance those two things? Because we see a lot of customers that are banging their head against a wall. They've got a product, or they're taking it to market, or they're using techniques that are no longer effective or were never effective. And they're trying to sell something that there's no appetite for in the marketplace. And whilst sometimes you have to create a market the customer doesn't know. Obviously, there is a point when you have to just wash your hands of it and say, I'm going to give up on this because this isn't ever going to work. So how does one reconcile those two things? Because I love the concept of Agile.
Right, right. Well, I think what's become popular over the last 10 years is the voice of the customer, right? But it's not really all about the voice of the customer. I think the voice of the customer is important because, to your point, the customer might tell you something, but might not necessarily tell you in a way that allows you to be competitive. They might not know how to describe what they really want, right? So beyond just listening to the voice of the customer, you need to study the market. You need to look at the competition and what the competition is delivering. And even though the voice of the customer is not saying at all that they want X, Y, Z, if your competitors are providing X, Y, Z, and it happens to be popular in the marketplace, you should listen to that as much as you listen to the voice of the customer, right?
Yeah.
So it's really still about the market. It's still about value, right? So, I would say, and even beyond that, I still would say, when we talk about listening, it's more than even just listening to the voice of the customer and the market. Some of it can be listening internally. Can we deliver what that voice of the customer or the market is saying? And if we can't, the real question is, do we need to get the resources that can deliver it, or do we need to really focus on our competency and what we can deliver? So it's really a complicated answer, or a complex.
So is Agile a company-wide thing? Because listening to Adam's question and then your answer there, Clarence, I kind of think that if you're in a project and you are in the marketing team executing, how agile can you be when it comes to changing the direction of the company? And so
Right.
And so does, a couple of questions, I guess. Does each person have a role within that team, and one person is responsible for actually helping to change the direction of the company if they thought they were going in the wrong direction?
Okay, so forgive my somewhat long-winded answer to that, but I'll try to make it short too. But so I founded a company called Agility Engineers, right? And the purpose of that was, the word agility means different things to different people, and the word engineers mean different things to different people. And what I'm trying to do in the marketplace is change the idea of what an engineer is and who the engineer is. I will argue that an engineer could be anybody at any level within an organization, right? Anybody who's involved with implementing transformational change and then using Agile to do that. Now, to answer your question, I'll say what's critical is understanding the difference between a methodology and a framework. And going back to what I said earlier, methodology are those fundamentals. I would tell any company of any size to master the methodologies of Scrum, Kanban, Extreme XP. And those are some, and to get everybody within the organization understanding what that is from a mastery standpoint, educate them and help them, get the training that they need in order to do that. And then as you decide to scale, you want to adopt some of the more popular scaling frameworks that we've heard of, SAFe, LESS, and design thinking, or some other scaling frameworks like, the DevOps. It really kind of depends on your organization and your industry. But before you decide to scale and adopt a scaling framework, you want to make sure you practice the fundamentals, right, as an organization, regardless of how large you are, right? Larger organizations have a bigger problem, and a lot of times it's that they might be practicing even the methodologies right, but they might be trying to implement two different scaling frameworks, right? And when you do that, you have to manage it in a way where you consciously decide if you're going to choose one over the other, or if you're going to combine them and get everybody on the same page. But what's critical is making sure everybody talks the same language as they scale.
Yeah. So, Clarence, excuse me. As you know, I teach at a local university.
Oh, I didn't realize that, but that's awesome.
So
We
yesterday's
need to
lesson,
talk about that because I want to go in that direction soon, by the way. But
absolutely love
anyway,
to.
yeah.
Yesterday's lesson was on leadership and the
Okay.
7 traits of leadership. One of the traits was leaders are decisive. Leaders pick a direction and stick to it. And then I heard you say one of the elements of one of the 4 principles of agile thinking is responding to change versus following a plan.
Absolutely.
So how do you tell my students the difference between responding to change versus following a plan, as opposed to, well, just willy-nilly going with the different flavor of the week and changing direction for the company every time you hear something new? How do we
Good question.
Well,
resolve that conflict, I guess?
Well, I would tell you that we live in a new world, and the definitions of leadership that we had within the last 20, 30, 40 years, it's not likely to work in the next 20, 30, 40 years, right? And so, old leadership would be you create a vision, and that vision was based on this broad-based idea or what have you, and you have everybody marching toward that vision. Well, if you do that, you miss out on the opportunities that in this market that we're in. Good example is ChatGPT. Nobody knew that would be on the radar at the end of last year, right? So if you are a leader within an organization and you say, well, that's new technology, we'll ignore it. We need to, it's just not that important. Well, you know what? I'm not sure how much of a leader you are if you haven't considered how ChatGPT, actually how AI is going to impact your business, your industry over the next 5 to 10 years, right? And so you have to be agile enough to realize that everything you thought about 2 years ago might be different, and that your responsibility, and this is me answering your question, your responsibility is to clarify your vision so that the folks that work on your management team and at the lower levels, that they could actually understand it enough to be able to translate it into OKRs or objectives that make sense. And so that when it gets to the team level, they can deliver.
Clarence, what's an OKR?
Sorry, thank you. It's objectives and key results. Objectives and key results.
So how do I figure as a leader when ChatGPT and AI is impactful enough that it deserves my attention when last week it was NFTs?
I appreciate that, but you know what? I think I was reading an article. There's an article out through LinkedIn from Bill Gates, and he was explaining that AI and ChatGPT for him is very similar to when the web started 20, 30 years ago and the GUI interface, right? And I would say NFTs and that type of stuff, they are innovative. They're wonderful technologies.
Clarence, what does GUI stand for?
I'm sorry, forgive me. Thank you. I would say that is the web user interface, right? When it became easy for us to point and click, right? That was very innovative enough where it compares to what AI does today, right? AI creates efficiency in a way that's remarkable. I'll give you a good example. We all own small companies. I have a ton of VAs, right? I was able to get rid of 2 VAs. Now, catch-22 is that 2 people lost their job. But
what does VA mean?
A virtual assistant. Thank you. I love you with the acronyms and keeping me on point there. But I would say I got rid of 2 VAs simply because of AI and what it actually does. Now, I'll say what's interesting is that it has had a whole lot of hype, but I've been using AI and related technologies for the last 3 years. The reason I'm able within my firm to harness it is because I have a way to do that, and that will give me an advantage as a small business owner right now over the next couple of years, right? And so going back to your leadership question, Rob, you know, as a leader, if you can see those innovative changes and how it can give your company an advantage, and you decide, okay, well, you know what, I need to update my vision. I need to update what I'm communicating to my organization. We need to be a little bit more competitive. That, to me, that's agile. That's being agile.
Here's a question, and I don't expect that there is an answer to this, but surely one of the challenges is that as a leader of the organization, you have to set an objective, you set a vision, you set a dream for where you're going and what the organization is there to do. And then along that process, you get blindsided by a load of new technologies that come in, and you have to consider how the graphical user interface, the internet, Web 2.0, AI, ChatGPT, the metaverse, all of these things impact your business. And is there not a very real risk that you end up just going round and round in ever decreasing circles? Oh, there's this new technology, it's going to revolutionize our industry. I'm going to focus on this. I'm going to learn everything that's learnable about NFTs or blockchain or AI or ChatGPT or DALL-E or whatever the latest thing is. And all of them potentially offer you that way of unlocking significant first mover advantage, a significant competitive advantage over other people in your space, but also, you know, it's a bottomless pit into which you can pour your time and effort, which may go nowhere. So NFTs would be a good example of that. You know, when they were launched, they were heralded as the way to prove that you owned this particular piece of art in the metaverse, and it was fantastic. It was a great way to make money. You know, everyone should be investing in this, and we should all be creating NFTs of our wares. And the reality is, a lot of people lost a load of money on that because they didn't really understand how that fantastic technology and that ownership certificate of things actually could play out in that bit in between the virtual world and the real world. And lots of people invested in vaporware, really.
Right.
And I think that there's a huge opportunity for people to keep going off in all of these directions and lose the direction that they should be going in, that original vision that they had.
Yeah, can I add something there? Because I think it's just, there are lots of new things all the time, right? And as a business, though, theoretically, hopefully, we have a purpose, right? Our purpose here is to do this, is to fix this problem in the market. And so it's one thing to chase technology and say, okay, now we have this and we can do this and we can do this and we can do this. But what are we here to do? And then the question becomes, how can we use this to improve how we do that? So it's not necessarily about changing your purpose as a business because there's a new technology. It's about saying, this is what we're here to do. This is what, so for example, what I'm here to do is to help sales and marketing teams be effective, right? There are tools that can help that. There are tools that don't help that. And so then you can focus your resources on researching and exploring the tools that could help do that. Some of them will, some of them won't. Let go of the ones that don't. But to me, this is really the nature of Agile, is that it's exploring around a central point. That this is what we're here to do, this central point. Not that that can't evolve, but that it's not about chasing the technology. It's about using the technology in an intelligent way to help us do what we're trying to do.
To that end, Tracy and Clarence, I guess this is the point I was trying to ask. Are there definitive checks and balances within Agile that ensure that we keep to that point, that allow us to determine when it does make sense to pivot versus just chasing the next thing that catches our fancy? How does Agile address that?
Okay, so and I'll speak to it at a high level because it's different depending on the scaling framework you're trying to follow, right? But you know, so one, to Tracy's point, I 100% agree with what she's saying, right? And I would say, and even going back to what Adam is saying, you need to put a process in place that allows you to evaluate technologies, that allows you to evaluate new innovations that could help you go in the right direction of that vision. So I think I suggested earlier that you should consider changing your vision. I wouldn't say you should consider changing it often, but if it's disconnected with what the marketplace wants and or your team can't deliver it, you need to probably consider changing that vision. But to Tracy's point, you know, if you have a vision that's pretty solid, it's in place, and then you're looking at different technologies, it's really a simple answer. You know, does this technology or does this innovation take us closer to that vision and doing what we're set out to do as a company, or does it take us away from that? And I would say one of the most important questions is it profitable? Can it create profit over a certain amount of time? You know.
And
So
Clarence, is so the daily stand-up process that you have?
Yeah.
Would that take account of basically having debates about making sure that what was it you called it? Working with the change rather than sticking to the plan, or I can't remember exactly what you said, but
I would say, so FYI, as a practitioner, daily stand-up, I don't care what methodology you're doing. I don't care what scaling framework you're doing. The daily stand-up is my favorite meeting, event, whatever you want to call it. It is my favorite. Why? Because that is when you have the opportunity to find out what changed. Right. That's when you have the opportunity to deal with the culture more than anything. Right. And a lot of times when people are implementing Agile, they forget about culture, at least at the team level. And that's when you go to a daily stand-up and you realize, and I'm talking in the terms of software development, but you realize that developer has been out for a week and there's not a whole lot of progress. And at the last minute, they decided to do XYZ, but it's not right. That's when you fix that problem. And you know what? You find out that developer actually is frustrated because they need to learn something that they don't know. And everybody's expecting it from them, but they just don't have it. When they have the transparency to come to that team meeting and say, I just don't know how to do what you guys want, or it's confusing, or it's not clear, or that's when you have an opportunity. And then from that, as you're scaling, other activities like a retrospective or opportunities to get that feedback on, are we where we're supposed to be based on that vision, based on the OKRs, based on you know, what we should be doing as a team.
I feel better about reporting back to my students. Thank you. Because what I can go to them and say is that as a leader, that vision should not change very often.
Yes.
But the path to it will change as often as necessary, as often as possible, when you can get there better, faster, more profitably with a new innovation.
Yeah. You stated it way better than I could. So thank you.
We did this collaboratively. We
Collaboration,
to it together.
We're being agile here.
Exactly.
Hey, Clarence, can I ask a question? Because you brought up the daily stand-up, and I have worked in software companies, so it's pretty common to do the daily stand-up. Something I also noticed was that at different times in the life cycle of the company I worked for, the daily stand-up became mostly a waste of time. And I think that was because we didn't have that culture, that team feeling of like, I could actually tell somebody if I'm stuck.
Yeah.
Okay? Yeah. And because if I did tell someone I was stuck, I would just get attacked in front of the rest of my team, and that feels uncomfortable. So then I don't do that. And I watch that happen to people as well, right? Where they're just like, what do you mean you don't know how to do this? You've had, okay, I just won't tell you next time. And we just won't get stuff done on time. So can you talk about, because you touched on culture as well, can you talk about the importance of, I mean, very minimally, we're talking about a psychologically safe culture, but can you just talk a little bit about how culture plays into making the process that we come up with on an agile nature actually productive?
Okay, so before I answer the question that you asked me directly, let me address something. What is a daily stand-up really? It is a 15-minute call typically, where all you're getting from each individual is, what did you do yesterday? What are you doing? What do you have planned for today? And what's standing in your way? And really, if you are a scrum master or that's facilitating that, your responsibility is, one, create that environment of transparency so that they can come to the table with their real issues, one. But two, they're telling you what happened yesterday. They're telling you what happened today. And in today's world, because of COVID-19, we're on video. If they do that and you're not looking at the body language, the facial expressions, you can't read, and you realize that, okay, what might be standing in their way might be them, but it might be leadership. It might be so your job as a scrum master is to facilitate them communicating, but get to that problem to help eliminate the problem. And then so it's a 15-minute meeting that could be an hour meeting, but when they identify the issues, you spend the rest of the hour dealing with those issues, right? And then that's where we get to the culture side of it, right? If I'm the scrum master of this team here, one, I should be doing a whole lot less talking. And I'm listening to every single one of you tell me what happened yesterday. And if you tell me that, you had a sibling die yesterday, well, guess what? If I say, okay, thanks, Adam, for sharing that. Hey, Jordan. And I don't address it, that impacts culture enough where folks start to realize they're not important to the team. And so when we talk about culture, it is understanding that that team is there to deliver value to the marketplace, yes, but how do you deliver value? You create an environment of transparency that opens the door to identifying issues that ultimately gets to a point of innovation where people can take a little bit of a risk, do it a little bit different, and innovate in a way that allows them to differentiate themselves as a team to actually help that overall vision.
So I think I just want to, because something that I'm comparing what you just said to what I experienced in daily stand-ups before, and there was no scrum master doing that. Right. So it's just one of my favorite things in all of these conversations is just to see how the technology and the process and the people all come together, because Absolutely. There is a people component of this. Yes, this is a lot about process and technology and moving forward, but there's people at the end of the day doing these things. And if there's not a person who, one, cares about facilitating that for people, and two, has the capacity to do that and the capability to do that, then literally we're all standing in a circle saying what we're going to do today and what we did yesterday, and
Absolutely.
Next person.
Absolutely.
I had a question surrounding how granular you can go in relation to the actual application of Agile. So the sales process, for example, is almost inherently waterfall. It's focused on that linear progression. How can we manage sales cycles in a more agile way?
I might need you to restate the question so I can better understand it. When you say the sales cycle part of it, it throws me off. So help me just understand.
Yeah, so whenever we're managing or traditionally, the traditional sales process is focused on that linear progression, completing one stage, moving to the next. But that's not how our buyers buy. How can we be more responsive to that?
Okay, now I understand. I would say that's when a good coach makes a difference, right? A good coach will manage that process, right? And what you're asking is, when you are living or working in an organization that is waterfall based or have an old way of doing things, how do you bring an agile way of being to that situation? And I would tell you that that's when a coach is responsible for identifying the disconnect between that team and the portfolio level, all the way up to the leadership level, and challenge people to create an environment for that team to be successful. And that's not easy. Meaning, I would tell you that not all coaches are equal in that some folks, because of the organizational culture, are afraid to challenge leadership. But the good coaches, they become that team advocate and say, okay, if you really want to deliver value, this process is happening over here in the organization, or that's happening, that dynamic is actually stifling the team from delivering successfully. And you have to be willing to push the envelope a little with leadership so that they create that environment. And I'm just going to tell you, if you have a politically charged environment, that's not easy to do. And that's the difference between an experienced coach and coaches versus folks that are not.
We have
Can I add something quickly before we go to Michael's question? Because
Sure.
it's a good question. I want to spend time on it. One of the things that I was just thinking too, Jordan, based on your question, is that I think there's some mindset things there, especially for small businesses or like individual salespeople who say, this is supposed to be a staged approach. Right. And like and I don't know why, but one of the things that just came to my head was like, what does it look like to sell a pair of shoes at a shoe store? Right? Like every single person has different size and shape of foot. Different people have to try on a different amount of shoes in order to find the right fit. Some people are looking for a trainer. Some people are looking for heels. People are looking for a different thing, yet they're still looking for a shoe. And so I think there's almost like a permission piece that we need to give ourselves to say like, hey, what if this wasn't linear? What if this actually had always been somewhat agile? And what we've tried to do is like stick the activities into boxes so we can convince ourselves that it's linear, but it actually has never been linear. It's always been a salesperson listening to somebody and hearing what they have to say and then figuring out if they can solve a problem. And it's almost never the exact same problem. So I think there's also just an opportunity to mindset shift there a little bit and challenge our own perspectives of, oh, maybe there was some agileness that was here anyway, and we can just like go with it.
I think that segues into Michael's question very well. Thank you. So, Michael, I apologize if I'm mispronouncing your last name. Michael Jarug asks, can we say for an organization to be agile, we need the culture and leadership to put agile mindset first? How would you encourage an agile mindset in an organization?
That is a very good question. And I would say that, let's say leadership it brought you in, and first of all, let's say they don't have that mindset. They don't have an agile mindset. Now, the fact that they brought somebody that does agile in to help with that mindset would say that they're trying to go in the right direction, right? But to really answer that question, I would say you should start all engagements with some type of assessment at all levels, right? In other words, and I advocate this big time when it comes to larger organizations with multiple frameworks going on, multiple teams. We try to go in and do an agility health type assessment at the team level, program portfolio level, enterprise level, and then walk through the results of that assessment, right? And so without, you really don't go into an organization leadership and say, okay, you guys need to be more agile, right? But you get the vision, you understand the product that needs to be delivered, and then you do those assessments, and then you facilitate a series of conversations where the purpose of, at the leadership level, you're asking that question. What do you think we need? Now, I'm the coach, and I'm asking the question to the leadership. What do you think we need to do to be more agile? And then you be quiet. And if you can have that conversation at the leadership level, you start to understand the different ideas of what agile means, and you'll get a whole lot of data. So data-driven type conversations. But then you get to a point where, as a facilitator, you realize that you need to help them talk the same language, right? And I would say, to answer that question is start with assessments. Use those assessments to generate conversations. Start at the leadership level, and then after you synthesize, cascade that information down in much the same way. But one caveat is, when you're doing assessments, you don't want to misuse the results of the assessment. In other words, we do a team level assessment. It is not to judge how good or bad that team is doing. And many times I've spoken to leadership. I've set their expectations that you might not necessarily get the results of this assessment, because it's for that team. So that team can self-reflect. That team can say, are we being agile or not? And it happens at all levels. They need to just be committed to delivering the value to the marketplace and having the best product, right? And then you want to use other metrics to judge the team and how they're doing.
I think you touched on something really important there too, Clarence, on the metrics, because I would say an organization that isn't currently using, I'll call it the agile mindsets, even before they even get to the process, is that there's like looking at things like, how do we respond to change versus just following the process? Because I've talked about this a lot on the show in terms of sales, but like sales, we have like a KPI, and our KPI is to make this many calls, and that's it, right? Who cares what else is happening down the line? And that isn't an agile mindset. And so I think when you can show people what it looks like in terms of a metric to say, this is what we could be celebrating or maybe even rewarding from an agile metric perspective versus our old school metrics. I think that is an interesting conversation to have with leaders, because it can show this is what our metrics are driving right now, and it's not agile. So if we do want to go agile, these are the types of metrics we're looking at, and how do you feel about that?
Right. Only thing I'll say about metrics is I believe that's one of those things that it still needs some maturity, right? I mean, there are different frameworks that say, oh, you should measure this, you should measure that. I would say it's not that simple, right? It depends on the product, it depends on the team. But one of the most popular metrics is probably velocity. In other words, how often is a team able to deliver features or deliver things over a certain a time period, usually a 2-week sprint. The challenge there is, when you're measuring metrics, can you look at that metric and say, okay, team A and team B, right? You should be hitting this metric, right? And you really can't do that. Meaning the metric for team A is the metric for team A and is what it is. And it's separate from the metric for team B, right? And so when you talk about velocity, they might deliver at different rates. And a lot of that might be the competency of the development team or whoever's building the product or what have you. There are various, yes, Tim.
Clarence, you said the word sprint.
Yes, you want me to clarify what that is?
Sprint.
Okay, so a sprint is an interval of commonly about 2 weeks, right? In order to deliver a feature or an agreed upon a set of features or feature right? It's usually 2 weeks. You find some teams say that they do it in 3 weeks, but one point to make about a sprint, it should be something that the team agrees on. I've found that over time that if that direction comes from at the portfolio level or leadership level, and they say, well, we want you to do 3 weeks. And a lot of times that happens because somewhere in the organization, somebody's practicing waterfall.
Right.
And so they can't necessarily control their intervals per se, but it's a bad idea.
Why would you do why would you do a sprint?
It's really so that you can complete a process and get feedback within that time frame. So a sprint, let's say you have a backlog of items that need to be delivered, right? The team chooses what actually is being built within that two week time frame, right? And after that 2 weeks, let's say they build all 5 items that they say they're going to build, right? At the end of it, you're going to have what's called a demo. Right. And I don't want to get too deep into it, but you have 2 different types of demos. You have a team demo and a system demo. But most important is you prove that you built what you said you were going to build. And then after you do that, you demo it. There's something called a retrospective, or you record what went wrong and how you can do it better. And you collect that information and you take that as an input to your next sprint, right? And so that over time you're getting better and better and better as a team.
Okay, thank you.
Hey, Clarence, I have an interesting question. Hopefully we have time to flip it in, but I'm just thinking about like the sprint. So I have a software background, so
Love
I'm
it.
understanding all the things that you're saying. But it's very common for that to happen in a development team. But I'm wondering if you have seen, or if any of your clients have implemented the concept of sprints in like leadership projects or sales projects or marketing projects. I can kind of get it maybe from the sale or from a marketing perspective, because like you generally have projects. But is the sprint concept something you think that is also extractable into the organization as a whole?
Yes. As you start to scale, right, it's probably called different things with different organizations depending on what they're but there becomes an overall organizational cadence, right? And if, for example, if you using SAFe as a framework, SAFe has something called a train, and a train is nothing more than a team of teams delivering the same product based on a specific value stream. And Tim, a value stream is but Tim, a value stream is really a way to look at funding projects, right? The old way would be budgets. The new way when it comes to Agile is value stream. And it's really getting feedback from the marketplace and making sure that everybody that's on the same team understand the value that they're delivering to the marketplace. So back to your question, Tracy, at the end of the day, when it gets there, it's called something different. I would go back and say it's the coach. The coach is responsible for working with leadership, working with everybody in the organization, and making sure that everybody's on the same page when it comes to what's expected at the team level. 2 weeks sprints, 3 week sprint, what the product is, how many, what functionality is being delivered. They should help with that process, but it also includes engagement from that scrum master on the team, that product owner on the team, and then making sure everybody on the team, the developers, understand what's expected. Everybody needs to understand the big picture.
So, Clarence, we only have a few minutes left. I wanted
Time went fast.
Yeah, that it does.
When you're having fun, Clarence.
Yeah.
The theme that has come up a few times this week centers around community. So I wanted to ask you regarding Agile. Is there a community being built around Agile?
That's interesting. I would say yes. Oh, the answer is yes, absolutely. But the better question is, is that community connected and succinct? Is it comprehensive? And I would tell you that it's splintered, in my view. Now that's debatable, but when I say splintered, I mean right now you have competing organizations that are trying to create agile best practices in their own way. You have SAFe, you have LESS, you have design thinking out there, you have in some cases, even Scrum and Kanban has matured into being frameworks. And so you have all of these different people thinking different. And to be absolutely frank with you, all they're saying to you when it comes to the practitioners at the team level delivering the product is, hey, you need to learn how to do your job better, and you need to get some continuing education. And it is my view that community needs a voice. And so you set it up, Rob, for me to kind of talk a little bit more about agility engineers. But agility engineers is a directory focused on giving practitioners a voice, right? And so over the next year, instead of saying, okay, well, agility engineers, the vision of the company is XYZ, and actually trying to promote it, I am doing something a little bit different. Not me, but me and now quite a few other folks I've met with since January. We're doing something different. We're going to interview more people at the team level and say, what do you think? Right? What do you think about the support of teams? What do you think of the big problems when it comes to Agile? And so to answer your question, Rob, I'll say that in order to really, really improve the community, we need to give a voice to the folks at the team level and listen to that voice, and not as a complaint, but as an opportunity to make that community better, right? And so hopefully that answers your question there.
Absolutely. Before we wrap it up, did anyone else have a question for Clarence?
I've got an observation.
Oh,
This was brilliant. Absolutely
Awesome.
Brilliant.
thank you.
I have loved learning about this stuff, and I love the way that you lay this out in a way which doesn't sound like you're talking to your 3-year-old son. It sounds like you're talking to a grown-up, and it's. I'm not a process kind of person generally.
Thank you.
And I love the fact that this. Yes, thanks, Tim. And this makes it seem really exciting and poignant and absolutely necessary. So I just love it. Absolutely.
Am I able to follow up with a comment, because he just, and I'll make it 30 seconds. You know what, Adam, you actually talked about the future, and I'll tell you, it is very exciting. When we get out of COVID, the effects of COVID-19, when the disruption with the banks and whatever the economy does over the next couple of years, a few opportunities will come, right? And one of them, and I believe that companies will be judged on if they're agile or not, right? And the definition of agile when it comes to the market or the street, it will not be what we think about it today. It will be how effectively do you listen to the voice of the customer and then work within your organization to deliver value to them. And I would tell you that will probably be one of the metrics that you would hear on CNBC or Bloomberg or what have you. They'll talk, is the company agile or not? So,
yeah.
Awesome. Thank you for that.
Yes.
Okay, so that brings us to the end of another edition of the Digital Download.
Can we give Clarence a round of applause,
please?
Clarence, you've just been awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
And I want to thank the audience for their participation as well. A lot of our traditional audiences joined us, of course. A lot of new faces. Thank you for chiming in. Thank you for sharing. Next week, we go back to the traditional time for the Digital Download for both coasts or both sides of the Atlantic, as it were. So it will be On digitaldownload.live, you'll find the link by Tuesday afternoon, and we'll go forward from there.
Stick
Clarence.
Stick Andrew's message up.
Oh, there we go.
Producer, please.
The
Thank you.
future is here.
The future is
Yeah,
here.
yeah.
There we go. Awesome. Andrew, always great to hear from you. Thank you for that. Clarence, thank you again.
Thank you.
Great learning from you. And of course, to the panelists, another exciting week. Thank you so much. Goodbye, everyone.
All right.
Thanks, everybody.
Have a good
Bye.
weekend.